Okay, so before we get started, just a couple of things about the assignments. There's a new virtual dissection assignment online. It's about clams. There's a video for you to watch and then a Google Doc to complete. Again, this isn't as good as doing an actual dissection, but this is what we've got. So this is the beginning of the new 9 weeks. You had a couple of play posits to watch yesterday. If any of you had trouble getting any of them to work, send me an email and I'll send you the link and a document that you can fill out instead of the questions. I don't know why it's not working for some people. Most people it's working fine for, others they're having trouble with some of them. So just send me an email and I'll send you the doc. Other than that, I guess I'll go ahead and show you. Yeah, I've got some snails here that I usually have in my classroom. I brought them home for today. Let's see if I can get this to work to show them to you. Share screen. There we go. There we go. Okay. So these are land snails, and these came from Albuquerque. They've been introduced to most of the United States. They're not from here originally, but they can be a pest to plants and crops. In fact, other snails have been imported specifically to get rid of these. I've had 2 different kinds of snails for a while, and it was strange to me that the small ones kept having babies and there were new ones all the time, but the big kind didn't. And then I found out the small ones actually eat the eggs of the big ones. This is kind of cool. Their tentacles are retractable. See, they can pull them in and then stick them right back out. This one's going to be brave. Let me bring it over here. We're going to see a video about the way these guys reproduce. But they eat the lettuce. You can see there's some holes in it already. They also can dry up, and you would think hibernate. Hibernate is just because of cold. It's called estivating. It's the same principle though. They go into they shut their bodies down when it's dry. In fact, I found one of these yesterday that had gotten out of the tank last year and was stuck to a wall. It had been there since before the end of the school year last year, and it was still there. Added some water to it and it started moving around just fine. The others I'd left in their cage and let them dry up since spring break, and I've added water and some food for them a couple of times since then, but otherwise they've been on their own. Let's see if I can get this one to, let's see, here we go. Isn't that weird? They're fun to watch. This is very similar to the species that was a zombie snail, and you can see this is what their tentacles look like normally when they're not infected. I've never seen one with the parasite in the tentacles. That's pretty strange. Let's see if we can get it to open up and let's retract. Anyway, that's the land snail, and they're, like I said, they've been introduced to most of the United States. Some students brought me some from Ruido, so these were in a well-watered lawn in Albuquerque. You're not going to find them out in the desert, this species anyway. when we get back in the classroom, I'll let y'all play with them and interact with them and everything, get a better look at them. But can't do it right now, so. Anyway, hold on a second while I wipe the snail slime off my desk. Okay, so we're going to start talking about mollusks now. We've finished the 3 types of worms, and we've talked about sponges and cnidarians too. So we've gone through, let's see, sponges, porifera, cnidaria, ctenophora, and then the nematoda, platyhelminthes, and annelida. So we've gone through 6 phyla so far. We have several more to go through, but we're going to start spending more time on each one because the ones we're doing are going to be more. They're going to be more important, more members of them, I guess. I guess we shouldn't say more important, but there's going to be more of most of them. Okay, so let's admit him. Okay, so for the warm-up, on the chat, go ahead and type in which worms you can remember that we've covered. There's 3 different phyla. See if you can remember. You can put either the phylum name or the common name. Anybody? Earthworms. Earthworms are in Annelida. Very good. The segmented worms. Yeah, some other flatworms, right? And there's one other. If they're not segmented and they're not flat, what are they? Round. Very good. Yes. So tapeworms are the flatworms. Roundworms are the nematodes. Flatworms are the platyhelminthes. And the earthworms are the annelids. Very good. Okay, what I want you to do now, just type in as many examples of mollusks as you can. Everybody should get one because I just showed it to you. But these, you can put that one, but think about any others you might know that are in mollusks. Anybody? Go ahead and type it into the chat. What's the one I just showed you? Gastropods. Gastropods are the snails and slugs. Now the worms aren't mollusks. Worms are the platyhelminthes, nematodes, and annelids. But the snails are gastropods. Octopus, very good. Nobody got that one last time. Yes, octopus and cephalopods are both mollusks. Octopus, squid, cuttlefish. So if snails are mollusks, what else would be a mollusk? What's a snail without a shell called? Slugs, right. And the one that nobody's gotten, it's pretty common. There you go, oysters. Oysters are bivalves. Very good. So those are there's one other group you probably, yes, squids are in the same group as the octopus, and they're mollusks. So there's one other y'all haven't mentioned, you've probably never heard of it, they're called chitons. And we'll talk about them when we get to them. Okay, so here's examples of mollusks. This is a scallop. It's a swimming clam, which is kind of strange, but they're around. This is a snail like the one I was just showing you. These are nudibranchs, which are basically sea slugs. This is a blue-ringed octopus, which is a cephalopod, a mollusk, and also a very venomous octopus. And this is a giant clam. Okay, so there's more species in any other animal phylum except the arthropods. So the mollusks are the second biggest of all of the animal phylum. Arthropods are insects, spiders, and crabs. They have a soft body, often protected by a calcium carbonate shell. They're unsegmented, and they typically have bilateral symmetry, but snails, they have bilateral symmetry, but then it's been twisted, so that kind of changes things up. But for the most part, they have bilateral symmetry. So we're going to be seeing this quite a bit. This is a pie chart showing the number of different species of all of the different phylums, or the major phyla. There's 93,000 species of described mollusks that are alive. 70,000 more species described in the fossils. So we know of almost as many fossil species of mollusks as we do living ones. The reason for that, of course, is mollusks have shells, and shells fossilize really well. So there's a huge number of other species that we, like sponges, and especially the jellyfish. Think about the jellyfish. There were lots of different species in the fossil record, but we don't know much about them because jellyfish don't fossilize very well. Very, very rarely do you find a jellyfish fossil and then you can't tell much about it. It's just kind of a round imprint in the mud. But mollusks fossilize really well. So here's the pie chart. This is the mollusca. What I want you to notice, though, is the arthropods. Well, it'll take us a little while to get to the arthropods, but the arthropods, insects, spiders, scorpions, crabs, shrimp, all of those with the jointed legs, that's 3/4 of all living things. Mollusks are a much smaller group, but they're the second biggest of everything else. If you'll look, the next largest are the annelids. Nematodes, no, I'm sorry, not the annelids, the nematodes. Annelids are over here. Porifera is just that very thin strip there. Cnidarians, are they even on this? There's not enough of them to even make the pie chart. They're listed in other. To think about this, though, we are in phylum Chordata. So that's the fish, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds. Pretty much all the things that you typically think about when you think about an animal. And they're this thin slice of the pie. So we are in a fairly, compared to the others, we don't have near as many species, the chordates. But anyway, the mollusks are the second largest of all the phyla. Arthropods are the biggest. And I just told you this, but go ahead and answer it. Which phylum has the most species? You have 20 seconds. Yes, this is for a grade, remember. 5 of you still haven't answered. Okay. So, very good. It's phylum Arthropoda are the largest group. Mollusks are second. Okay, so let me see if I did that right. Stop. There we go. Okay, so here's the body plan of the typical mollusk. They have a head, and the head is, remember the flatworms had a head, but the mouth wasn't there. But in the mollusks, they have the head, which is they have the eyes and other sensory organs, the tentacles like we were watching on the snail. The visceral mass, which is where the organs are, reproductive organs, respiratory organs, digestive organs, and then a muscular foot. So here's the visceral mass, the head, and the foot. They have a mantle, which covers the visceral mass and secretes the shell. And this is something I was surprised how many people in Houston didn't know. Seashells were once part of living creatures, and they're secreted by snails and clams and things like that. So the mantle secretes the shell, which protects the animal. The radula. I wish the snails were cooperating and I could show you that, but this is a ribbon of teeth used in feeding. Very small teeth, but they use them to scrape things, and they can do everything from harpoon a fish with them, scrape algae with them, or eat a hole in a piece of lettuce. Some of them can even drill holes in the shells of other mollusks. They have gills for gas exchange in the mantle cavity. And obviously some of them can live in the air, but they still have the respiratory organs there. This is the radula, magnified a lot. It's ribbons of small chitin teeth. Chitin is the same material that beetle shells are made of. So it's a hard material, and they use thousands of these little hooks to scrape away algae or what have you. Here you can see them. This one's scraping algae off glass, so it's a good chance to see it. You can see the white, and you can almost see little teeth there. That's the radula. And here you can see it also on another snail. Okay, so there are exceptions to this basic plan. Bivalves, which are the clams and oysters, don't have radulas. They are filter feeders. They just take particles out of the water, so they don't need teeth for that. Squid have internal shells, not external shells. Octopuses don't have shells at all. When we do the virtual squid dissection, you'll be able to see that pen, the internal shell. Gives it a little bit of structure support. So there's 4 major classes, and I was able to get pictures of 3 of them from SpongeBob. So gastropoda, which are the snails and slugs, like Gary here. Gastropoda means stomach, foot. They crawl on their foot is where we would think their stomach should be. Cephalopoda are the octopus and squid. Cuttlefish, which you may or may not have heard of, but they're very fascinating. We'll talk about them. Bivalvia, which are the clams and oysters, right here. And then the one you've probably not heard of, Polyplacophora. These are the chitins. They're basically a slug with shell plates across their back. Now I have some in the aquarium. They came in with the live rock. They're about 1/4 of an inch long, and they only come out at night, so they won't. There's not a way I can show them to you. But they're kind of interesting, but one of the smaller groups that you probably haven't heard of. So which of these is not a class of phylum Mollusca? And there you go. Someone was having trouble with the question not showing up. If you can't see it, let me know. Okay, so if you aren't real comfortable with these classes yet, Polyplacophora is a class, that's the chitins. Cephalopoda is a class, that's the octopus and squid. Octopoda is not a class of phylum Mollusca, and Bivalvia is the clams and oysters. So Octopoda is the one that's not a class. It's actually an order, which we haven't talked about yet. Okay, class Gastropoda. And remember, gastro means stomach, pod means foot. This is the largest, most common, and most diverse group. 40,000 to 75,000 species of gastropods, snails and slugs. And you find them just about everywhere. In rivers and streams, crawling through lawns, in the ocean. They're very common. You don't see too many out in the open desert because their skin does not keep the water in. They get into the desert, dry air, this water just goes right through their skin. They can estivate, go into a hibernation type state to protect themselves, and they can shield them from losing more water, but you still don't see them in really, really dry areas. Of course, there's slugs. This is a banana slug. They're found on the west coast in the rainforest, the northern rainforest, like Washington, Oregon. They have a coiled mass of vital organs enclosed by a shell and a ventral creeping foot. What do they eat? Just about everything. Many are vegetarians. They scrape algae off of rocks with a radula. This one's eating a freeze-dried mealworm. I haven't tried that. I'll have to see if I can get one to eat. I've never tried to feed one like that. Some are predatory. They prey on bivalves, which are clams, worms, fishes, sponges. Believe it or not, and I'll show you a video, some of them can actually catch and eat fish. Here's some examples. I have some shells at school that I'll try to bring to show you on Thursday. Some are quite large. Some are smaller. This one's eating a fish. Some are beautiful. There's a lot of people that collect seashells. This is a common one on the Gulf Coast. This is one I would love to get for they have in the classroom. This is an giant African land snail. They were imported some for pets, and unfortunately they got loose and have spread pretty wildly in Florida, and they're a pest there. They actually get on people's houses and eat the stucco, if you can believe that, and they're really bad about eating vegetation. Look how large it is. It's just, that would be a really cool pet. Okay, so this is a video by a guy I'll show you several videos from, named on YouTube. They call him Z.E. Frank. I usually have to edit his videos because they're really crude sometimes, and you'll see some of that on this one. But he's got good information, and he does it in a funny way. Sometimes he says things that aren't true, and I'll let you know about that. But anyway.
Here are true facts.
Hold on a second. Make it where the video will show better.
Facts about the land snail. The land snail is just like a tiny human who happens to look like a disembodied tongue and is covered in mucus and has a shell. The land snail breathes air just like the peoples do, and it eats with its mouth hole. Its bottom pair of tentacles are for smelling, while its top pair are for crude seeing. It is, however, born without ears, which makes hearing difficult. Impossible, really. They're deaf. But in all other ways, they're exactly like a tiny human being who happens to have a penis next to his face and a vagina. Most land snails are hermaphrodites, meaning they have both mommy parts and daddy parts. This, however, does not mean that they can self-baby make. When they mate, land snails circle around one another. Think full-body French kiss, but with more mucus. As they do this, they're looking for opportunities to impale each other with their love darts. I wish this was a metaphor, but it's not. They actually have love darts. Like actual darts. It's crazy. Land snails have a totally different level of kinky. These calcified darts, which look totally badass, are stored in the snail's dart sac, located right below the penis. When the darts impale the mate, they inhibit spermicidal secretions, which makes the next part more effective. The snail holds on to sperm from multiple partners before fertilizing its eggs. The eggs are then laid into topsoil, and soon baby snails emerge, thus completing the spiral of life. You see what I did there? Spiral. Oh, God, kill me. Next time you get anxious about sex or sexuality, remember that when you meet someone you find attractive, at least you don't have to worry about a dart getting shot into your head.
Yeah. It's kind of strange videos, but there's some good information there. I have actually seen the darts on these snails that I showed you earlier. You can actually see the darts sticking out of them after they've bred. I haven't ever gotten any babies from these large snails. The small ones I have, some students brought me a couple, so probably 5 years ago now, and they've bred a lot, and I probably have hundreds of them in an aquarium there. These guys haven't bred too much yet, so I'll have to see what happens. Cone snails. These are frightening snails, if you can imagine a snail being frightening. They capture their prey with a venomous harpoon, which is a modified radula. Remember, the radula is the teeth. The sting can be as mild as a bee sting for some species, and others can be fatal. About 30 people have actually died from them. Usually, it's pretty rare. I mean, 30 people is not that many over recorded history, but can you imagine going to heaven and someone asks you how you died and you have to tell them a snail killed you? But these are pretty amazing snails. Large species, their harpoon can penetrate gloves and wetsuits. Some of the toxins are being investigated as medicines. One is 1,000 times as powerful as morphine and is not addictive. So there's a lot of these animals that we're learning about new medicines from them. And a lot of animals that we'll talk about that are venomous, the venoms do strange things and are possibly useful to us. Okay, which is not a feeding method for gastropods? And I talked about this just a little bit ago. There you go, 30 seconds. Okay. So yes, I did not, there may be one, but as far as I'm aware, there are not any filter feeding gastropods. They do catch fish. We talked about that and showed you a picture, and I'm about to show you a video. A lot of them eat plants. The snails I just showed you love lettuce, things like that. Some of them eat bivalves or other snails. There's those results. Okay, so here's a cone snail.
This siphon acts as a breathing tube and a warning. Emerging from the sediment is its owner, a 6-inch long toxic killer. The cone snail. Snails are usually thought of as slow, slimy, and delicious in a garlic butter sauce. But with some 40,000 different species of snails, a few are bound to buck the system. In the waters of Southeast Asia, this is the underwater version of a tank, with a hard spiral shell, flexible treads, and down in front, a cannon. It has eye stalks on either side, but it hunts primarily by scent using its siphon. The target? A nearby fish. The fish hides deeper under the rock rather than swimming away. Bad idea. It still has room to move. But inside this probing tube called a proboscis, the cone snail has a long-range weapon, a harpoon. Made of modified tooth, the harpoon can be launched by a quick muscular contraction. Fish hunting snails are particularly dangerous, with venom strong enough to kill a human. This harpoon is cocked and loaded. Target is within range. The cone snail strikes. The fish is paralyzed within seconds, reeled back in, and swallowed. With a full belly, the cone snail returns under the sediment. Its siphon peeking out as a reminder and a warning. Heed it.
Here you can see catch a clownfish. Poor Nemo. See, the harpoon paralyzes it really quickly, and then it just swallows it whole. Very strange. Okay, so true or false, hundreds of people have been killed by cone snails. Okay, so yes, it's false. Only about 30 people have died from cone snails, so it's pretty rare. Nudibranchs. Nudibranchs are really, some of them are beautiful, and some of them are really amazing. I'm going to share with you a couple of videos about nudibranchs.
Nudibranchs are sea slugs. They come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors, and superpowers. This nudibranch hovers near the water's surface. It has the ability to stay buoyant by gulping large amounts of air and floating like a balloon. It drifts toward its prey, the Portuguese man of war. The man of war is more than 50 times the size of the nudibranch. Suicidally insane? Not when you have superpowers. It nips away at the man of war's tentacles. They are covered in stinging nematocysts capable of killing a small fish or making a grown man cry. But the nudibranch is immune thanks to a thick layer of mucus coated around its mouth. While it gobbles tentacles, it also ingests some of the nematocyst stingers. Whatever doesn't kill a nudibranch makes it stronger. It passes the stingers from its gut to underneath its skin and recycles them for its own defense. So when this filefish tries to take a bite out of the nudibranch, the fish gets a painful jolt, but nothing more.
Okay, so think about that. That one feeds on the tentacles of Portuguese man-o-war, and you saw what it, in that one video I showed you, you saw how painful they can be. But not only does it do that, but it takes the nematocyst out of what it's eaten and puts it in its own skin to protect itself. This next one, though, is even more amazing.
Hello, this is Hank Green, and welcome to SciShow. You might have noticed that I talk a lot about how great plants are, and why shouldn't I? They're autotrophs. They can harness the raw, untamed power of the sun and use it to make food for themselves. Pretty impressive. So why can't animals do it? Well, oddly enough, some of them do. And in just the past few years, researchers have been discovering animals that seem to be able to harvest sunlight for energy. Take, for instance, the eastern emerald alysia, a sea slug that looks like a big floating leaf. It lives along the east coast of the United States, where it just hangs out eating a specific kind of yellow-green algae. It's been known for a long time that this slug had a special relationship with the algae, but until recently, nobody knew that the slug was actually using the algae's genes for photosynthesis. See, the slug eats the algae to absorb its chloroplasts, the organelles in the cells that actually do the photosynthesizing. But in order to turn the sunlight into chemical energy, the chloroplasts need a whole set of specialized proteins to help. So the slug has lifted genes from the algae that allow it to make these proteins itself. Nobody's sure exactly how this happened, but we do know that these slugs pass those algal genes on to their little baby slugs, which only need to eat about 2 weeks of the year. The rest of the time, they're just soaking in the rays.
Okay, so did you catch all of that? Not only, like with the other one we were reading, they actually eat the nematocyst. They actually eat an organelle, the chloroplast. They take the chloroplast out of the cells of the plants they eat, put it in their own cells, and then keep them alive because they stole genes from the plant and then put it into their own genetic code. And so now they're coding for the materials to keep the chloroplast alive. That's bizarre and amazing. Come on. PowerPoint is frozen for a second. Bear with me. See if we can get it going again. Not sure what happened there. Well, there we go. Okay, so let me check one thing. I think we're about done. Oh, there's a couple more things to show you. That was a weird place to freeze, but okay. Okay, so just a couple of examples of some marine snails. This is a moon snail. If you ever go to the beach on the Gulf Coast, you will find these shells. They're very common, the Texas coast especially. And their egg case you can find occasionally. It's really weird. They mix sand and mucus and their eggs to form this collar. Another very common seashell is the lightning whelk. You can find this again on the Gulf Coast. You can also find their eggs sometimes, which look really odd. But again, these are fairly common on the Gulf Coast. It's actually the state shell of Texas. I looked, and New Mexico does not have the state shell. Sorry about that. The oyster drill is a pretty nondescript looking little snail, but it actually drills holes through the shells of bivalves and other snails to eat them. You can find shells that look like this with a perfect little hole at the top, and that is from the oyster drill drilling a hole through it and then eating the clam or the snail. Uses a combination of scraping with the radula, applying chemicals to soften the shell, and it eventually drills a hole into the body of the clam and eats it. Okay, and that is where we're going to stop. So don't forget the virtual clam dissection lab. Make sure you do that. And that's all I have for you. If you don't have any questions, you're free to go.